The sun blazed down on the wide football field of Ridgewood High, glinting off rows of folding chairs and a sea of black graduation gowns. Senior families filled the stadium, waving cameras and shouting names with proud, tearful voices. Somewhere among them, squeezed between metal bleachers and the trash bins he'd been organizing just an hour ago, stood a man in faded overalls with calloused hands shoved deep into his pockets. His name was Ethan Cole, a janitor, a single father, and a man who never thought he'd survive long enough to see this day. But there he was, heart thundering in his chest as his twin girls, Lily and Hannah, walked across the stage. His throat tightened. He stood still, hidden at the back, afraid of taking attention he felt he didn't deserve. His boots were worn. His shirt smelled faintly of bleach from a morning shift, and his old baseball cap hid the gray at his temples. Yet nothing could dim the pride welling up inside him as his daughters accepted their diplomas. If you believe kindness, second chances and sacrifices like this deserve to be seen and remembered, please take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel so more inspiring stories can reach the world. Ethan watched as the twins waved from the stage, not to a crowd, but to him. They weren't the kind of girls who had luxury clothes or expensive photo shoots like many of their classmates. They didn't drive shiny cars or live in a house with a yard. They shared an old two-bedroom apartment with their dad, where they studied late at night on a wobbly kitchen table, surrounded by stacks of discount textbooks. Most days, dinner was canned soup or whatever leftovers Ethan could bring home from school. Yet those girls smiled more than anyone he knew, and they worked harder than most adults he'd served beside back in the Marine Corps. Yes, once upon a time he wasn't just a janitor sweeping halls and clearing trash. He served overseas. He wore a uniform. He carried a rifle and shouldered the weight of lives. But that was before life took things from him. Before a blast in a dusty village far away stole his best friend and scarred his leg. Before hospital bills swallowed his savings. Before his wife left, saying she couldn't raise children with a broken man she didn't recognize anymore. Ethan had been left with 2 baby girls, barely crawling, a damaged knee, and a heart heavy with silent guilt. He took work wherever he could, and the school janitor job gave him not only a paycheck, but the chance to watch his daughters grow. Every hallway he mopped, every locker he scrubbed. He did it with the hope that one day those girls would walk across a stage like this one and change their destiny. Today was that day. As the ceremony ended and families rushed forward with flowers, balloons, and cameras, Ethan stayed back, letting others take their pictures first. He didn't have a bouquet or a gift. His gift was decades of sacrifice. He slowly approached the fence surrounding the field, leaning on it to steady his leg. The twins spotted him immediately, pushing through clusters of families until they reached him. They threw their arms around him, their caps nearly flying off. They smelled like summer, hope, and cheap perfume. He squeezed them tightly, feeling the years of struggle melt into that single moment. He whispered that he was proud, but his voice cracked before he could finish the sentence. Students and parents walked past, some smiling politely, others barely noticing the quiet man in work clothes hugging his daughters. Many of them walked by him daily without ever learning his name. Some students thought he only mopped floors because he failed in life. Some teachers barely looked at him unless they needed a mess cleaned or tables set. But his girls knew who he was. They knew what he sacrificed, and that was enough for him. While taking photos with an old second-hand phone, someone caught his eye. A tall, broad-shouldered man in a crisp USMC dress uniform walked across the field. His short haircut and sharp demeanor stood out in the sea of casual attire. The man seemed out of place at a high school graduation, and yet he moved with purpose, scanning the crowd. His chest shimmered with ribbons, his posture rigid, his eyes trained. He looked like someone who had seen things most of the world couldn't imagine. Then, as he passed close to Ethan, something happened. The captain's gaze lowered, locking onto Ethan's forearm where his sleeve had slipped back. There, half hidden under wrinkles and scars, was a tattoo. Not a decorative one, but a unit symbol. Specific, rare, seen only by those who served in the same place, during a particular time when the world was on fire. The captain froze mid-step. People bumped into him, but he didn't move. His eyes widened as if he had just seen a ghost. He stared at Ethan like the earth had tilted beneath him. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, covering the tattoo with his sleeve. He didn't like attention. He didn't want memories dragged to the surface. But the officer stepped closer. The captain's throat bobbed as he swallowed hard, eyes flicking from Ethan's face to his arm again. It wasn't admiration, more like shock, recognition, a flood of emotions that made his jaw clench. Ethan tensed. He remembered too many faces, too many men he couldn't save. He thought maybe this captain remembered a mission, a battlefield, a tragedy. His fingers curled instinctively, as if gripping a weapon he no longer carried. But instead of anger, sadness, or confrontation, something entirely different happened. The captain straightened, held himself tall, and in a voice shaking with respect, he addressed Ethan. Parents nearby turned their heads, pausing conversations as the officer's words seemed to slice through the noise of celebration. Ethan felt his heart thump harder. He didn't want attention. He didn't want a spotlight, but the captain kept going, telling the crowd, loud, enough for many to hear, that Ethan wasn't just a janitor. He called him a hero, a man who once refused to leave his wounded squad despite orders, a man who shielded others with his own body when a blast went off, saving lives. The very reason some soldiers were alive today was because Ethan Cole didn't run. His sacrifice wasn't forgotten, even if he tried to bury it under mop water in quiet halls. Whispers spread. People stared. Some students gasped. Teachers who barely acknowledged him now looked as if they'd never seen him before. His daughters turned to him, eyes wide with awe and confusion, as though they were just meeting their father for the first time. They knew he served, but he never spoke of honor or heroism. He only told them he came home alive while good men didn't, and that was nothing to be proud of. But now a highly decorated Marine stood before him, refusing to let him shrink into the shadows. The captain, voice shaking, admitted that he survived a mission years ago because men like Ethan refused to leave others behind. He said that men like Ethan were the reason the younger soldiers came home. The captain's hands trembled slightly as he spoke, betraying the depth of emotion beneath his rigid posture. He concluded by telling everyone who could hear that real heroes don't brag. They carry their burdens silently. They mop floors, raise daughters alone, and keep moving forward with a knee that aches every morning because they'd rather sacrifice their body than lose their brothers. Ethan's daughters began to cry. They clutched his arms, their caps slipping as tears smudged their mascara. In that moment, the world seemed to stand still. The wind quieted. Even the chattering of families became muted. Ethan's knees weakly locked, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself to stand not as a janitor, not as a broken war veteran, but as a father who fought for his children's future and earned it twice over. The captain saluted him. Not a casual gesture, not out of pity. A full, formal salute delivered with reverence, the kind given to someone whose life made others possible. Parents lowered their cameras, some teachers bowed their heads, even students who once walked past him without thought now saw the humble man who cleaned their hallways in an entirely different light. Ethan nodded slowly, unable to speak, overwhelmed by emotion he'd buried beneath silence and exhaustion. The captain then turned to the twins and congratulated them, saying they came from a legacy of strength and sacrifice. He encouraged them to pursue their dreams boldly because their father had already shown them what courage looked like. As the officer left, the crowd parted respectfully, watching him walk away, his uniform glinting under the sun. The twins hugged Ethan again, holding him tightly. They told him they loved him, told him they were proud, told him that being a janitor never made him small. If anything, it made his sacrifices even greater, because he built their future alone and without applause. Ethan felt something crack open inside him, something heavy lifting just enough for light to reach it. He suddenly realized that the shame he'd carried all these years didn't belong to him. It belonged to the war, to pain, to memories of what he lost, not what he protected. He was not broken. He was still here, still fighting, by raising daughters who would change their world in peaceful ways. He didn't need medals to prove anything. He only needed this moment, these girls, and the truth finally spoken aloud. If this story has touched your heart, please take a moment now to like, share, and subscribe to support more emotional stories like this. Your engagement helps us spread inspiration and kindness across the world. Before we reveal how Ethan's daughters honored him later that night, we have one special request for you. Please leave a comment below and tell us, what sacrifice has someone made for you that you'll never forget? Later that evening, the twins surprised him with something he could never have imagined. They handed him a small gift, a simple handmade frame, holding a photo of them in their graduation gowns. Standing beside him, his arm tattoo faintly visible. Under the photo they had engraved 3 words, "Our hero, always." Ethan's eyes blurred, but he didn't wipe the tears this time. He let them fall. He let himself feel it. He hugged his daughters, and in that embrace, he finally understood that he hadn't just survived life's battles. He had won the most important one. He raised 2 strong, grateful daughters who knew the value of sacrifice. And no title, no uniform, no mop, and no scar could ever take that victory away. He was their hero, and that was enough.